So we're going to be going over a new form today, which is called standard form. So remember, for point slope, you needed to know a point and a slope, okay, in order to write it into point slope form. Okay. So today, standard form is a little bit different, obviously, because it has a new name. Um, and there are specific things that standard form you cannot have, like you cannot have fractions at all. So that means now you're going to have to eliminate fractions if you have a fraction in the equation. Okay, so we're going to go over what standard form looks like, starting with just identifying A, B, and C. So let's take a look. Standard form looks like this. That means the x and y terms are on the left side of the equal sign, and then it equals to whatever the constant is. You might want to write. Okay. So the A, the B, and the C are just numbers. Okay, so the A and B will be like the coefficients in front of the x and y terms, and this term right here does not have a variable, so it's considered a constant. Now, this is the tricky part. A, B, and C all must be integers. Okay? However, the first term is a little special. The one that's considered the x term has to be a whole number. Now, what's the difference between that? That means it cannot be negative. Okay? So the A term cannot be negative. So there's very specific things for standard form. So you just can't have any type of number. So this first term must be positive. Okay, cannot be negative at all. The B and C can be positive or negative. Okay, that's why it says they can be integers. So they can be positive or negative. Okay, you also want to put no fractions, because that's what it means by integers, no decimals. Okay. All right, so let's take a look at this particular problem here. So if you're asked to take an equation and write it in standard form, now one thing you need to know about standard form, in order to get to standard form, you must start in some other form first. So which means you know two forms already. You know slope-intercept form, and now you know point-slope form. So it has to be in one of those forms before converting it to standard. So you can't go directly to standard. All right, you can't just say, okay, I got this information, I'm going to go directly to standard. You can't do that. It has to be in one of the other forms first. Okay, now, what form is this in already?
Point slope.
This is not point slope. This is called slope-intercept form. Okay, y equals mx plus b. So right now, this is in slope-intercept form. I want to convert it to standard form, which means I want it to look like this. Okay, which means I want the x and the y term on the left side of the equal sign. So technically, you know, I could just move this x term over here, right? So now, what we did here first, since I know that everything must be integers, we multiplied everything by 4. Why do we multiply everything by 4? Because that's the common denominator. Okay, and that's how you get rid of the 1/4. Because what is 1/4 times 4? 1. So your whole goal is to get rid of those fractions. So multiply everything by 4, and then that's going to give you this. That's going to give you 4y equals x minus 12, because you're just multiplying each term by 4, so that eliminates the fraction. Okay, because remember, we got to have integers. So now I'm going to subtract the x to the other side. So let's move the x over. So when I do that, I'll have negative x plus 4y equals to negative 12. Okay, because I'm taking the x term and moving it to the other side, because standard form says x and y have to be on the same side, on the left side. Now, I'm not done, because for standard form, the first term, the x term, must be positive. So you can either divide everything by -1 or multiply everything by -1 so that first term can be positive. It also changes the signs of all the terms. So not only changes this negative x to a positive, it changes that to a negative and changes the -12 to a positive. So basically it changes all the signs. Okay, but the most important one is for you to get the first term to be a positive term. Okay, any questions about that? Okay, it's a lot different from point slope, because, you know, there's specific criteria with the numbers and where they should be placed. Okay. All right, so let's take a look at this one. So this is in point slope form, because I told you, you know, it's going to be in some other form first. So this is in point slope. Who can tell me the slope in this problem? Yes, 3. All right, what's the point? Start with the x first. -2, +4. Okay, so this is in point slope form. So what I'm going to do first is to just distribute the 3. Okay, just multiply by 3. So you're going to have y minus 4 equals 3x plus 6. Once I do that, then I'm going to move the 4 over. Now, can I move the 3x over first? Absolutely. It doesn't matter which one you move first. Okay, it really doesn't. So here we just move the 4 over first. So 6 plus 4, that's going to give me 10. So now I have it in slope-intercept form. Now I have to move the x term over, so I'm going to subtract that to the other side. And then I have -3x plus y equals to 10. And of course, my first term cannot be negative, so I simply, and you don't even have to show that step of dividing everything by 1 or multiplying everything by 1. You can simply just change the signs. Okay? Mathematically, we know what we did, so you don't really need to show that particular step. All right, any questions about example 2? Okay. All right, so this one says write an equation in standard form for the line graphed below. Okay, remember I said you can't go directly to standard form. You have to have it in some other form first. So either you can start off by doing point slope, which would be y minus y sub 1 equals m times x minus x of 1. That's what we learned in our last lesson. Or you can start off by writing in slope-intercept form. It has to be in one of these forms first. Okay. So if you're given a graph and you're asked to write this in standard form, choose one of these forms to put it in first. So we're going to do slope-intercept form, okay? Because I can tell where it's crossing the the y-axis. That's at -1. I can also do the slope. Okay, so rise over run, that'll be what? Negative 2/3. Okay, so right from the graph, I can get negative 2/3 x minus 1. Okay, I can get that right in slope-intercept form. All right, so now I need to convert it to standard form. Ax plus by equals c with integers and whole numbers for the a term. Okay, so first thing if you want to do, you can get rid of all of the fractions here. So that means we're going to multiply everything by 3, okay, both sides. So then I'll end up with 3y equals negative 2x minus 3. So the only other move I need to make is to add this 2x to the other side. So once I do that, I have 2x plus 3y equals negative 3. And I'm done because I have all integers and the x term is positive. Okay. Now, you may not have all three terms. That's another exception. You might just have, two terms, depending on what type of line it is. So, like just the x and a constant, or just the y number and a constant. Okay, so you might not have all three all the time. All right, let's take a look at this one. So let's see if we can come up with the correct equation first. Okay, where is this line crossing the y-axis?
3.
At 3, and what is the slope?
1/5.
All right, so our slope is 1/5, so we're going to have y equals 1/5 x plus 3. Okay. So how do I get rid of the 1/5? Multiply everything by 5. Okay, so let's do that. So when I multiply everything by 5, that's going to give me 5y equals to what x plus 15?
Right. Do we just put x?
Right, we actually just say x. And then we're going to move the x to the other side. When we do that, we end up with a negative x plus 5y. So we have to then change the signs to everything, and so we ended up with positive x minus 5y equals negative 15. So when you change the signs, make sure you change the signs to all three terms. Okay? That's standard form. All right, so what if you are given the problem in standard form and you're asked to graph it? Okay, so what I would like for everyone to do, I'll give you a second to take this and put it into slope-intercept form. That means solve for y. Okay, so go ahead and solve for y. All right, so you should have y equals to 1/2 x, because when you divide negative 3 and negative 6, you get a positive 1/2, and 18 divided by negative 6 is negative 3. So here, guys, what you had to do first is move the x term to the other side, okay, and then divide by the negative 6. So then it's easy to graph because you guys already know how to graph using the slope and y-intercept. So you start at negative 3. Okay, which is here. And then you do rise over run, so you go up 1 over 2. Okay, that would be that point. Up 1 over 2 again. That would be your other point. And you really only need 3. Okay, so we'll just be consistent. We've always done just 3 points. If you want to do more, that's up to you. Okay. Okay, so I want you to take this problem now and solve for y. Okay, move your x term to the other side and divide by 4. And then graph it. All right, so you should have negative 1/4 x, y equals, that is, negative 1/4 x plus 3. So here you subtract the x to the other side and divide by 4. Okay, so you're going to start at 3. Okay, that is your b. And then you do up 1, to the left 4, or you can also do down 1 and then to the right 4. Okay. All right, any questions? Okay. All right, so right now you're going to then work on your assignment that's listed on your calendar. On the classwork for today, on page 324 and 325, it does say you're going to be doing some problems with x and y intercepts. So just recall x and y intercepts. And you might want to, write this down in your spiral. So if it asks you to find the x and y intercepts of the graph of each equation, which is actually the very first question on page 324, and they give you this. So we did x and y intercept in the last unit. So when you're doing x and y intercept, remember we replace x with 0, solve for y, replace y with 0, solve for x. So you actually just do the problem twice. So you just say 0. This is an easy one because their coefficients are 1. So this will be the y-intercept is 9. Okay, then you do the same problem again, but then replacing y with 0. Okay, so that's pretty easy to do. So just make sure when you're doing these types of problems, you do have to work them twice, because the first one you have to replace y with 0, and the second one you replace x with 0, or vice versa. It doesn't matter which one you replace first. Okay, that's how you find the x and y intercept. Okay, so just recall that. I just wanted to briefly go over that. So when you do the first couple of problems, you're starting off with finding the x and y intercepts. Anything that it says to graph must be done on graph paper. So if it says graph using the x and y intercepts, okay, if it doesn't say graph, then obviously you don't need to graph it. But if it only says find, then you just find the x and y intercepts.